everyone, my name is Ronak and you are watching VectoArt. So in today's video we will be creating this beautiful looking dashboard using WPF, live charts, and we will be using Visual Studio 2022 Blend to design this whole dashboard. So for those who haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. It means a lot and it motivates me to create more such videos. And regarding the source code, I have a link in the description which you can download. So moving ahead, let's start by opening Blend and start creating a new project. Let's select WPF application, and if you do not find it in a recent templates, you can search for it. Now let's give this project a name and click on next. Let's leave the framework details as is, and let's wait for the project to load. We have our project ready. So this is our window. Let's go to tools and first go to NuGet package manager and go to browse and search for handy controls. So this is nice UI library which provides beautiful custom controls which I've been using for a long time, and you can also try it. You can, if you do not find this video useful or if it is too fast for you, because I have speed up the process here so that it does not get too long. But yes, so now I'm copying the resources in the app.xaml file, and once that is done, I will also copy the namespace on the main window.xaml file, and let me change the height and width of this window. And let's change some basic properties like allow transparency. Let's change the window style to none to remove the borders, and let's change the resize to no resize and starting position to center. And let's run this application and see it in action. So this is the size that we desire. Let's stop the application and move on to the browser where I have this link open. It is like a documentation for handy controls and how to use it. I will leave a link in the description, and we are going to make use of this side menu control for our navigation bar. So this has nice documentation. It has examples, events that are used, and what are the classes, and a small image of how the um, control will look. So let's copy the code and paste it inside our grid. I will remove the unnecessary code which we do not need, and I will just keep only the necessary details. So go from here to up to a certain point, the video will be speed up so that, like I said, otherwise it will be a much bigger video. So I will keep explaining what I'm doing, but if you want, you can always slow the playback and watch the video carefully. And also you can go back to my previous videos on handy controls where I've explained process in much detail. So I also have a dedicated video on this side menu control. So here I am going to the first menu item, which is the overview, and changing the background and foreground color to black and white respectively. And now I do not need the other menu items, so let me remove these. And I am just holding on right now to the overview one. And also I will change the width and height of the image that I have inside. And let's remove these internal sub menu items. So if you see this documentation, if you click on the overview, it will expand and show you the sub menu items. So I do not need the sub menu items here, so I am just removing those. And now we have a template ready. Let's decrease the size, and I am not going to show you how to expand it here, but you can do it programmatically. Increase the width of the side menu based on click of the first menu item. So let me not, I'll not do it. And let's select the side menu item, the overview one, and paste it multiple times, and change the icon and the header for each item that we add. I will speed up the process here again, and let's wait for this to complete. I have several videos on my channel, please do check it out, where I have explained most of the controls that are available in the handy controls library. I have also started discussions and videos on Avalonia, which is a new UI library, and the WinUI 3 as well. So please do check it out. I hope you will like those videos, and yeah. So let's wait for this to complete. As you can see, I am changing the header and the icons. Okay, let's change the margin for the last one, and this will be a different icon. Also, I have downloaded all these icons from icons8.com. I will share the link in the description. Please do check it out and download your desired icons. So this is our window. And now let's move on. Now that we have finished the side menu, let's move on to the main panel. Let's change the window color first. So here I am changing the window color and not the grid color. Let's add a text block and make some cosmetic changes to the window. So let's add a title called overview. Decrease its size, copy and paste it. You can also copy and paste using by holding the Alt key on the keyboard and dragging it using the mouse. Let's change the font size and foreground color. So let's run this and see it in action. Looks good. Let's stop the application. Let's move on and add a search bar. So here if you go to documentation, they have a nice looking search bar with this documentation. These are the examples, and how we can show info title and a placeholder text. So there are several ways to do it. So let me copy the last one, last example, and add it in our grid. Remove the show clear button, attribute, resize the control, and change the placeholder text to search. Remove the info element because I do not want the info title, and we need that static resource because that is what will display this placeholder text. So let us leave it as is, and let's make some cosmetic changes like foreground and background color changes. So once that is done, keep in mind not to change the foreground color to the same color as the background, because once you start typing, the text will not be visible because the foreground is similar to the background window color. So now I'm adding a grid here, and let's make some changes to the colors, background colors and foreground color. I will play around with these colors, so I'm speeding up the process here. I'm just trying to match the color palette. Before it was a bluish tint, but now I am changing it to a black grayscale color palette. So that is done. Now let's go back to the documentation and look for a card control. This card control is very interesting. It is basically a rectangle with some elements on it, and also it has nice shadows and borders. So I will copy that and place it inside our grid. There you go. And it has a header and a footer section. So let's make some changes. Let's remove and add some controls. So for starters, let's see what happens if we remove the style. And as you can see, the appearance changes. So let me bring it back. Even though there are warnings, it's okay. You can still use them. Let me uh, position it on the main content area. And now let's go to the card and start editing this card that we have. So for starters, let's change the card background color and foreground color. I have copied the color from the last grid that we added, which is the gray grid on the right hand side, and the foreground I've changed it to white. So if you see this bottom footer part, it is inside a stack panel. So I will add a grid, and I'm adding this grid so that I can add a person picture or an avatar next to this stack panel. So let me resize the stack panel that we have and add an ellipse, and let's change the properties of this ellipse. For starters, let's change the fill to an picture of a person, and change this to uniform fill, and let's change the width and height to say 50. This is all trial and error. It's not hard and fast rule that you have to um, make it to 50. You can maybe change it to 30. Depends on what you prefer. So I had actually accidentally placed it on the header section. So now I have cut and paste it in the footer section where it's supposed to be. And I have changed the size again back to 39 points. And yeah, so and also I'm changing the stroke of that ellipse to white. Let's change the title and the description. Also, let's change the size of this text block and change the description. Um, Lastly, let's change the width of this stack panel. And now let's move on to the header part. So let's go to the header of this card and add a grid like before. Let's resize the grid and start adding contents within this grid. So let's start first by adding a rectangle. change the properties like background color, stroke, and let's add a text block inside this rectangle. Let's change the size of the text block. Again, this is just a design template. You can modify it according to your needs. Maybe you want an icon there, or maybe you need a image instead of a rectangle. So you can do it. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to use a rectangle and a text block. So here are some stats. I have used a text block to represent that, and I have hard coded the values, but yes, you can update it in real time from the database or any other data source. So that is that, and then there is some description about this tile or this card. Let me decrease the font size and the alignment, text alignment, and change the description. Okay, so this is done. Let's decrease the size of the card, and what I will do next is let's copy this first card and duplicate it several times. I have not shown you that process because it is very similar, and it is just changing some of the properties. So I have not done that. I have also made a copy now of the last card that I have, and I am removing the controls from that and just using the template, and just keeping the one grid inside this card because I do not want a footer in this card. So here I will be housing a live chart control. So let's go to tools, NuGet package manager, and search for live charts. Here select the second option for WPF, install it. Once it is installed, let's go, it will be appearing in the install tab, and let's go to the documentation of this live charts. I will leave a link in the description. You can go check it out. So let's go to tutorial and samples, and here I will just select this. There are so many examples, but I will just go with this solid color because this looks very interesting. So first things first, let's include the namespace. Uh, and then next, let's go and copy the entire grid, and paste it inside the grid that we just created inside our newly created card. So here we have a grid inside a grid, so let's remove that. We just need one grid element and not a duplicate grid. Or a nested grid to say. So we don't need that. Let's now copy the code behind data. So let's place it inside the next to the initialize components, and include the namespace and include the chart values. The namespace is duplicated. We'll remove it because we already have it included on the top. So this is our chart from live charts, and if you run this you will see a nice looking live chart example. You can include a bar chart, you can include a pie chart or any chart, and include the chart values from the database or any other data source from the code behind file. So now I will really speed up the process because we have done much of the work, and all the next process that we are going to do is just duplicating or copying the data from the first half or the left hand side to the right hand side. There are some controls which I will be talking about, but the video will be fast forwarded so that we do not waste much of the time. Here I'm adding a rectangle, and inside that rectangle I have filled it with a image. Next, I will go to the combo box control from the handy controls and paste it after the rectangle. Remove the combo box items and position it above the image that we just added. Um, I want the image to be on top, so I'll copy the rectangle and place it next to the combo after the combo box so that it appears on top. I will also change the edges of the rectangle or the image to round and start adding items in the combo box. There are two items that you can see. One is from the handy controls and one is the regular checkbox. So I have added the regular checkbox. And if you run the application, now you will see that our checkbox has two items. Uh, the checkbox looks a bit too large, so let me reduce the size of the checkbox and also the image that we have. So let's decrease the size. Okay, so this looks good. Let's make a copy of the text block that we have on top and include the titles here, online and offline. Actually, I had to include a tab panel here. If you guys do not want this static text here on the top, you can go check out the tab control in the handy controls examples. It is very beautiful and you can make use of that instead of just this text block, because a tab panel would be much interesting and much more relevant and useful. So now I've copied the stack panel from the card that we created earlier and just pasted it here on the grid, making some cosmetic changes, copying it and pasting it several times to display this online people. But instead you can also go for a list. You can create these person picture and details of the person who are online as a user control. You can go check out my previous videos where I've explained how to do this, and you can then add these user controls in your list. In that way you can add data to your list dynamically and you can always scroll the list. uh, then just making some changes to the properties here. And finally, I will add one more control from the handy control list, that is the circular progress bar. So let me copy this first example and paste it after a stack panel. Remove all the properties that we have by default and we will go to the properties section and first change the width and height. Let's next change the value to 0. Let's say change it to 80. Change the arc thickness to 2. So changing the arc thickness will decrease the thickness of the ring. And finally, I will remove the show text checkbox. So because I do not want the checks, and I will change the foreground to green. It was a gradient color. I've moved it to solid color and changed it to green. Now I'm just duplicating it several times. So this can also be a part of your user control, and all together you can add this to a list. And then I will just copy these two items from the card and let's do one thing. Let's create it. Let's add a text block, another text block next to it. So this is it. I think we are at the end of this video. If you are still with me, you hope you all liked watching this video. If you do, please give this video a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and please check out my other videos. Thank you.